or other. Mainstream media. Government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Well, of course, that's Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. And interestingly enough, what you'll read in my new book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, is that the very night that the British royal family member and officer who was going to fly with Hess for the peace treaty and was killed in the subsequent plane crash, he had dinner with Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, which I don't know if that proves that there was some connection between Bernhard and the crash, but it certainly shows that the level at which this global politicking was taking place.
Yeah, so, and everything you're hearing is admitted historical fact. Understand.
This is all documented fact.
This is not debatable. That's why Hitler at Dunkirk let the British evacuate and only put on a small show with Goering and some aircraft bombing with Stukas.
The game plan was for Britain to ally with Germany and to stop communism. But once Hitler had stopped the communists in the summer of 1941...
He was triple-crossed.
He was triple-crossed, and they turned on him because they did not want a global national socialist system either. They wanted a Balkanized system of socialist nations that they could play off against each other.
And that is the great game of the invisible British Imperium. Exactly.
It's all mega politics, and then they decided that because of the wealth and because of the vast amount of resources in the United States, they would simply move operations to the United States. So they came over here, they began to buy up corporations. The bigger the corporations got, the more they bought up.
And then suddenly, by 1947, our military gets death's heads put on their tanks and uniforms. Everything starts shifting. They bring the symbol of fasci into the Senate. It all converts.
That's right. And today we see our troops are wearing the Nazi coal scuttle helmets, which they've dubbed the Fritz. We see imperial eagles all over on our postage stamps and in our advertisements and in symbols of the government.
An eagle drawn by Hitler. He drew the eagle. He drew the first Volkswagen, the people's car. He drew the Olympic rings. It is all the mind of Adolf Hitler. And then let's expand on that. Because if you compartmentalize it down to just the Vatican, or you compartmentalize it just down to the British Imperium, you compartmentalize it and then they win again. We have the Zionists funding and helping Hitler and demanding ransoms from Jews to leave, having Jews in New York lobby to not let, this is all mainline history, big Jewish scholars written about it, not to leave Germany, only to go to Palestine in the build-up there with the British then and the Rothschilds. And so then when you look at this, it is a master plan with interbred Nazis, British, and Zionists together, and they're all occultists at the top. And then meanwhile, most of our movement fights about whether it's Protestants, Jews, Catholics, any of this. When all the people themselves are good, it's evil at the top of every major mechanism.
That's essentially correct. And if you don't go along, well, then they buy you out. And if that doesn't work, then they come and intimidate you out. And if that doesn't work, then they just kill you. It's Nazi methodology. And we see the same thing going on in this country because the thing that in January of 1945, German war production was actually at higher levels than it had been in 1940 when they were at the top of their game. Why is that? Because two things historians tell us. Number one, the German people were propagandized. Their media told them everything looks bad now, but it's going to get better. We have secret weapons coming. We're going to turn this around. Be patriotic. Go to work. And they did. And then the second thing is secret terror. If you tried to stand up and say, hey, something's gone wrong here, then you were a defeatist, and you'd be arrested by the Gestapo and you disappeared. Okay, we've got the same thing in this country today. We've got a news media that's under the control of 5 international corporations, which keeps telling us everything's okay. We might have a little bit of a recession going, and at the same time we have secret terror, just like Congressman Ron Pauls, who's causing problem, and his plane suddenly has real serious trouble.
And then has a nose
Paul
down.
Wellstone, he didn't walk away from his.
Now let's stop because I ran ahead with Big Picture. With one of the leading historians on the reality of what really happened, Jim Mars, all documented in his bombshell book available at Infowars.com. All of you have got to get The Rise of the Fourth Reich. Buy 4 or 5 copies. Give it to everybody you know. It's vital. We have it where you can also get it at a discount with my film Martial Law, which spends an hour on this with incredible stuff showing the Nazis in Madison Square Garden. I mean, right at the start of World War II. Unbelievable stuff. You need to get it at Infowars.com. But I want to go back, and we'll keep you in the next hour, Jim, and we're going to push back Bob Chapman a little bit here with some economic news because I cut you short with Paul. But I don't want to skip over the Vatican. I cut you off there to give Big Picture. I want to go back to what you were talking about with Ratzinger. Then let's look at other areas of the globalist control and then project forward into the future and bring in the Bushes and the rest of it. Okay,
Sounds
Jim?
good to me.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, well, after the war, the same people who had been instrumental in financing Hitler, John J. McCloy of National City Bank, which is now Citicorp, Alan Dulles, who was OAS chief in Switzerland during the war and then moved to Berlin and then came over here and began, it was the longest serving CIA director, and his brother, John Foster Dulles, who became Secretary of State under Dwight Eisenhower. And under these folks, they pardoned and whitewashed the Nazi backgrounds of thousands of Nazis and actually brought them into the United States. Now, we know that we brought in all their rocket scientists, Werner von Braun, who headed the Marshall Space Center and was instrumental in getting us to the moon. We also know there were other top Nazis, such as General Walter Dornberger of the Luftwaffe, who came over and ended up as a vice president of Bell Helicopter. And then there were thousands of others, including their mind control experts and their pharmaceutical experts and people who had worked with the IG Farben chemical combine, and they all came into this country and were rolled into our military-industrial complex, which Dwight Eisenhower warned us about as he was leaving office. And then they slowly began to just take over the national security apparatus of the United States and turn this into a national security state, which is what we have today. And I guess probably one of the key things that happened was in September of 1947 when Harry Truman signed the National Security Act in 1947. This created the CIA, rolled all the intelligence functionings under this one umbrella, separated the Air Force from the Army, changed the name of the War Department to the Defense Department.
Stay there. We got a break. Come back. But I'm going to make you go back to the Vatican, though. I want to talk about that and that role, too. Jim Mars is our guest, 15 minutes in the next hour. Then Bob Chapman joins us. I got to get Jim up here for 2 hours, talk about his new book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. So you can call in. Now, I want to go back because we also see them forming the new European Union now. We see everybody converting over there to Catholicism because they admit European Union is going to be basically a super state of that. And I've always tried to not bash groups and not make it about Jews or Catholics or Arabs because it only is divisive. But to admit the corruption of these institutions is a healthy thing. That doesn't mean the individuals. And so a lot of people decried that I wouldn't say this about Zionists or that about Catholics. Hey, if it gets us on the road to fight the New World Order and moving on and admitting that they're in control of every major group, then fine. You want it, you'll get it here. I've had many guests over the years actually talking about the Vatican, but we haven't done it with any vitriol. But if people want that, we will do that. Because there's certainly plenty of evil there. Now, give me lots of Vatican evil here. Let me hear. Just give it all to me, Jim.
Well, they argue back and forth about the Pope Pius XII and the 11th. Pope Pius XI came out very strongly against the Nazis and then suddenly died while being treated by a doctor who happened to be, I'm sure by sheer coincidence, the father of Reich Pt3, who was the mistress to Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy. And Pope Pius XII came in, and what everybody loses sight of is that in July of 1933, just a few months after Hitler had taken power in Germany, a concordant was reached between Pope Pius and Nazi Germany. And this is still in effect today. And according to this concordant, there was to be no interference by the church in political affairs, and it also required all bishops to take a loyalty oath to the state and required all priests to be German citizens and subordinate to government officials. So in other words, basically, it was the state taking over the church.